All right, I think it's recording. So I just wanted to say hi. I'm Erik Reichenbach, and I'm speaking with Hartley Jafine. Is that how you say your last name?
Jafine.
Jafine, thank you. Um, that's a very American pronunciation, I think, on my part. Um, and Jennifer Nash. Hi, welcome. Um,
Hi.
so,
Oh,
so how do I know these guys? I did a commission. I'm going to drag it onto the screen here for you guys for your class called Surviving Survivor: Insights from Reality TV for Real Life. And it, when I was learned about this commission and about this class, aside from the fact that it was something cool for me to draw and create for you guys, it was really interesting to learn that there's essentially a survivor course. So whichever one of you wants to respond, like, where did this idea come from? Like, what made you guys think to do this?
Well, truly, it was our love of Survivor. We would meet in our program office on Thursday mornings and unpack and debrief and chat about the episode that we had seen the night before. And I believe, Jen, it was kind of a thought experiment. There was one reading week in February that we said, like, could this be a course? Like, could we create a course out of this? And then over the reading week, Jen, you took a first stab at the course outline, and then that was where kind of the birth of the course came.
yeah, I think it was something that we had talked about for a few years. At first, it was sort of a joke. It was like, hey, maybe we could sort of meld our love for Survivor with some of our work stuff. And then we thought, oh, we'll make up this draft course outline as sort of a funny thing to do. And then we talked about it more and more. And then we talked to our assistant dean, and she was like, yeah, totally, go for it. And we were like, okay, let's do it.
So what are some of the other courses that you guys teach outside of this to give kind of a frame of like where, like, I get that you guys, like, some of the best things, first of all, form from jokes. Like, I love just like a joking idea, like, hey, what about this? And then it forms like this amazing idea. But like, what are you guys teaching outside of this that kind of led to this?
Well, some of the courses that I teach in the Bachelor of Health Sciences program, where we both are housed, I teach courses in theater, applied theater, so looking at how we can use theater as a tool for development, social or political change, as well as courses looking at the intersections of arts and research, how you can use the arts as a way to communicate research findings. And then Jen and I both teach in the first year course, the program course called Inquiry, which is a course for all first year students in the program, which is generally a course that asks students to really reflect on their skills, think about how teams and groups work together, and to think deeply about how to do research, which was sort of one of our entry points into thinking about how what we do in Inquiry very much resembles how Survivor operates.
Okay.
What about you, Jen?
So my background's a little bit different. I have a clinical background, and so my role in the Bachelor of Health Science program tends to be a little bit more around sort of health and well-being. I teach a course on pain, for example.
Okay.
And then I am also involved in some of the courses that Hartley mentioned. We co-facilitate and have team taught a few different things together. I also do some of the group process courses. So looking deeply sort of at the theoretical pieces, experiential learning application of how groups function, and talking about communication and decision making and leadership, and looking at how those things play out.
Okay.
And yeah, so that sort of links to some of the topics we explore in the course.
Very cool. Like, just looking over the list, like for this poster that I made for you guys, you have topics like leadership and building community, the biopsychosocial impact of playing the game, group process and decision making. Like, what I love about this course when I was like looking over this and doing this, and now hearing you guys talk about it, is there's kind of this pseudoscience that people have when they watch like a show like Survivor. Like, they're like, oh, there's this, we know how people communicate and we know how groups form because we've lived our lives and we've interacted with groups of people throughout our life, throughout our jobs and our families. But you guys come at this angle of a more academic angle, and you're kind of, I would imagine you guys are putting some numbers and you're putting some real theory behind this stuff, as opposed to like an armchair psychiatrist or an armchair psychologist who's like watching the show or experiencing it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we try and get the students to do, is we use the show Survivor as sort of the text for the course. So instead of buying a textbook and reading that, it's watching episodes. And then we pull out some of the pieces from the episodes, and we have the students take a look at the literature and find out, okay, this happened. What does the literature say about how groups form? What does the literature say about different types of leadership styles? And then think about, okay, how is this in the real world? What does this look like in Survivor? What does this look like in their lives as students? And try and put some of those pieces together. So it's really interdisciplinary in nature.
Very cool. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, Hartley?
Yeah, I mean, just exactly to build on what Jen was saying, it's been really interesting to see how students are looking at how the literature plays out in Survivor, which sometimes is very different from the real world. Sometimes it's very similar to the real world. And then also there are times when the students can uncover and tease out how things might seem different in the real world, but when you actually look at it very closely, there's a lot of overlap between things that we think are just can happen on the island, but actually play out very similarly in kind of our real world context.
Okay. And I do like the connection to real life. Like you guys specifically mentioned in the course, insights from reality TV for real life. Because I do think a lot of people, and even when I actually had the opportunity to talk to some of your classmates at a previous class, I think that a lot of people judge Survivor differently than real life, or they separate it because they think it's a TV show. So it has this special aura to it, or it has this specialness of like, these people are characters, they're not real. But as somebody who's gone through this, I can definitely say this is reality. This is in a way it has different reflections of real life because it is real. It's not a scripted show. So that's really important that I think you guys connect that to real life.
Absolutely. I mean, I think some of the topics when we talk about, the representation of race or sex and gender, so many of those conversations that play out in the show around how a female finalist is viewed by a jury, and kind of thinking about, well, what are the assumptions and stereotypes that people make about a female body or that specific female body, or what profession they hold, and kind of what assumptions, like if you're a certain profession, you can't lie, but if you're another profession, you can lie. And how those things certainly kind of play out in a real world context. Yeah,
completely. I'm trying to think of specific examples too, because so far we've kind of talked about in the general like vagueness, but it's like there's just these moments in the show that stand out to me. Like I'm trying to remember, I think it was Game Changers, the entire exchange with Zeke, and I'm trying to remember his name now. Oh crap, I know this. Jeff Varner, like that's a very real human moment. It was uncomfortable, it was powerful, but like that was something that I always look to that. That's one of the moments to me that stands out. Like that is a very real human conversation that happened. That was not scripted, that was not fake, and that touches on so many different things. There's all kinds of moments like that, but that's like one example of a moment that stands out to me that kind of fits in with a lot of this different stuff that you guys are talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly as we spoke about when you came into our class about just how certain conversations like what happened in season 39 with Kelly and Dan had happened previously. And the show, in a lot of ways, acts as that kind of, not that it was ever okay, but it acts as a social marker of this is how the culture and society viewed it in season 5 with Gandia and Ted. And now this is how society views it in 2019 with Dan and Kelly, and right. Like neither is okay, but the way the fans, the way the show kind of framed it was certainly very different.
Right. I think I spoke about that on the call. So we essentially talked about 39. When I actually came into the class and got to talk, there was a lot of talk about mental health, which actually got me thinking about a lot of stuff recently. But I remember that we were talking about 39 and what happened on season 39. And all of a sudden, when I was watching that on TV, I remember, oh crap, this happened before. And I like blocked it out of my memory because it wasn't that big of a deal back then. It's so weird how, in a way, Survivor's like a marker of the temperature of society in so many respects, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to think if one of the other questions that I guess I had for you guys is, when you guys talk about this stuff, you guys have other survivors come in from time to time. Who have you guys had either the pleasure or the interesting experience of talking to in the past?
Well, this is our second year running the course.
Okay.
So last year was our first go at it, and we were very lucky with the response that we got last year. One of the things, the way we structured the course both last year and this year, is that we watch season 37 in full. We watch an episode a week of season 37, and then we are able to pull in other episodes from other seasons depending on the topic for the week.
Okay.
And we pretty much span, season 1 to season 39 last year.
Wow.
And with watching season 37, we were lucky to get Christian Hubicki and Gabby Pascuzzi from season 37, which was really great because the students really got to know them intimately from watching their entire season.
Cool.
This year, we were able to have you join us, which was really exciting, and Lex Vandenberg joined us as well earlier this semester.
Very cool. Yeah, I think I saw Lex once. I think I saw him briefly at Give Kids the World, that there's a big charity in Florida, Hearts of Reality. I think I saw him briefly. In terms of the course, when you guys are studying this stuff, do you guys have like themes for seasons kind of based around what happens? Like how, when you guys cover a season, like what does that look like?
Well, I don't know. I think it's looking at and pulling up particular moments that really highlight a conversation or a topic. So, in thinking about or thinking about when we come back, this is reading week right now for us. When we come back from the reading week, the topic that we're entering with is kind of the impact of season themes on gameplay. Okay. So certainly we're going to be pulling from Heroes, Hustlers, and Healers, Hustlers,
yeah.
And Brains, Beauty, Brawn, and calling people all-stars, talking about your season, fans versus favorites, and how those framings of a season impact how players perceive themselves. And then, again, linking at how it relates to real life, just thinking about what labels do to individuals. Once you're labeled a nerd or a jock or any one of those kind of overarching archetypes, and thinking about how that impacts how you kind of perform in society.
Okay.
I don't know, Jen, do you have anything else to add?
I think that was really good. So we have this one season, as Hartley said, that were watched throughout the sort of academic year, throughout the course, and pull on these different themes. So every week has one of those themes that you've seen, that you've been talking about, Erik. One of those themes that we'll sort of focus on, and we'll watch David versus Goliath, and then we'll watch a few other things associated with it to get some conversation going. I think one of the really interesting things is with the course this year, we had a few people who signed up for the course because they're big Survivor fans, but we had a lot of people sign up for the course who had only watched a little bit of Survivor, or maybe we had some people who've never watched Survivor before, but we're interested in this idea of taking the reality TV, taking Survivor, and using that to start conversations and have discussions about some of these topics. And so I think that's been really cool, is to get people talking about these things, and hopefully we're sort of growing some new Survivor fans through the process.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's something that always comes up. Like Survivor, kind of around the time, I think around my second time playing, like between my first and my second time playing through 16 to 26, I remember that there was a select group of people that really cared about Survivor, and when they met me, they would be like really excited, like, oh my God, tell me about Survivor. But it was really kind of like, not too many. And even more recently, now that I think Survivor is on all these streaming platforms, and Netflix even has Survivor online, I'll start to see there's this younger generation that's like rediscovering it. And it's pretty weird, but at the same time, it's also like, this show has been good for a while and it's existed, but I think it's been kind of like a pop culture thing. So people are just like, oh yeah, Survivor is a show. And they don't think as deeply. And that's what I really appreciate about you guys doing this course, is like, you guys are thinking deeply about, like, there are some really interesting, things going on with this show.
Absolutely. And it's funny to us, because I remember where I was when I watched season 1. Episode 1, I can picture my living room where I was, kind of being awed by it. And some of the students in this class were born in 2000 or 2001.
Yep.
And so it's really kind of neat to kind of see that as well, because like you said, they're either rediscovering it or kind of being brought into a world that they're watching in retrospect, so to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think some of it is even the family connection. And some people have talked about that, how Survivor to them was a family thing. It was something you did together, you talked about at the dinner table. And I think some of our students being born, as Hartley said, 2000, 2001, they didn't watch it back then, but their parents did. And so their parents have this love of Survivor, and they have this warm feeling that comes with Survivor, and that it was a family thing for them, or it was something they did with their friends. For me, in university, when I was in school, that was something we did as a group. Everybody got together in the common room and watched Survivor. That was what you did. So I have some of those memories, and that's what Survivor was to me at that point.
Yeah, I think when I talked to you guys on your class, someone did ask, like, how did you get interested in it? And we watched the first season, and I was very young. I don't know how young I was because I'm terrible at math, but I know that I was pretty young. And I remember when Richard Hatch won the first season, my parents were arguing over whether he deserved to win. And it made me so entertained watching my parents like debate, like, should Richard have won? No, he was a bad person. No, he played the game. And they started to debate. And that actually got me more interested in it once my parents were like enthralled and like debating. I'm like, wow, this show hit something.
Yeah, and it's really, again, interesting to think about how times have evolved, because in one of the future classes that we have, we look at lies, ethics, and morality. And we look at how Richard Hatch was portrayed in his gameplay, which really was not really that evil or villainous. It was just he created an alliance and followed through with his alliance.
Right.
And compare that to today's gameplay, which is much more cutthroat, intentionally lying and backstabbing and trying to create these big moments of villainy. So it's interesting to see kind of how we perceived villainy and kind of evil acts back in season 1, 2, and 3, and how we're looking at it now in a Russell Hantz world.
Right. Absolutely. Were you going to say something, Jen?
No, I was just thinking about, as every time we have a conversation about Survivor, it reminds me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. Just like you were saying earlier, things that I had sort of forgotten about, and then you remember these bits and pieces, they come back. So I was just reflecting on that.
Yeah, it is so strange to me how over time the goalpost moves season by season. And what's really interesting to me is how players learn from past seasons. Like, we've developed this kind of history, this chronological history of developments that over time, like, I mean, Richard Hatch, inventing alliances, essentially, in the first season. Like, that's, that created something that has gone to the present, completely gone to the present. And every time someone does something, it kind of adds to the chronologic, like, game theory of it as it builds on it over time, which to me is something really unique that you don't get in, like, a board game, and you don't get in other stuff. Like other games, like, you have this, because there's so much pressure on it to win the game and win the $1 million, people who get cast now go back and they rewatch everything and they try to learn as much as they can about all these. There's this, massive history to study. And you guys are studying it, just to study it.
Yeah, and I think what I really love about the show, and I think what we really love about the show, is the fact that even though you can study it and know how to play a good game, as Jen, you can probably speak to it better with kind of group processing and kind of group decision making, that it's not as simple as that. Because when you have people who have different motivations and different desires and different reasons for being there, it completely, you could have this is how you play the game and this is how you play it to win, and still the other people that you need to work with create obstacles and challenges for you to kind of achieve that.
Mm-hmm. It's totally like real life. You work in groups, and you work in a different group, and there's different factors, different people at play, and so the same strategies don't work, the same communications don't work, the same decision making strategies don't work. And it's so interesting to see, like you said, you can have a sense, okay, this is the way to do it, but that's not going to work in this season because the players are different, and because maybe there are different challenges, or the immunity idols are different, or there are other pieces
right.
to the game that have changed, and so things that you assume might work maybe don't work, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But also when you're, I imagine when you're there, it's maybe not as easy as it seems when you're watching it on TV saying, oh yeah, I totally would have done this. But when you're actually there in the moment, is that what you would actually do? Because I think there's, probably some different factors at play.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many variables, and that's something I try to tell fans, is that there are so many variables in play, and there's so many unknowns. The editing, I think it's been pretty well publicized by everybody who does an exit interview for Survivor, that you don't get all the information that viewers see, and that because of editing, you don't get the same level of understanding of the game until you're out of it and you see it. But I do agree with what you're saying, that there are so many variables, and I think Max Dawson was somebody who stood out. I don't know if he taught a class on Survivor, or if he did something similar like this, and he did not do very well. And it was not for lack of trying, and it wasn't for lack of information.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a really good example. And thinking about, he's someone who knew the show so intimately, and still, something as simple as, I know in his tribe, in his season, he was in a good position, then there was a tribe swap, which can create unpredictability. And I'm thinking about even you in 26, in a medical evacuation, all of a sudden you could plan and do extremely well and make it to the very end, and then your body isn't able to continue. And
right.
That's something you have absolutely no control over.
Right. I think, and I've spoken to people who actually do like game board design and that kind of stuff, and talk about game theory, and they talk about there's skill versus chance. And a lot of times when you have a board game and you design it and there's too much chance involved, people feel like the game is unfair. And if there's too much skill involved, there's another effect that occurs where people feel like, oh, there should be more chance to give more variability, to give players an equal playing field. And I think the viewership generally, they try to balance that out in the editing. Like, they try to show if somebody is out because of some crazy advantage or because of a medical evacuation, people look at that more sympathetically, like, oh, that was chance, like that was out of their control, but I mean, I wouldn't. Twitter sometimes has a different opinion.
Yeah, and it just makes me think about, certainly, like personality. Like, personality is something that, everyone has their own personality, and certainly you can perform differently. But I imagine on a show like Survivor, it's hard to keep up a performance just because you're so stripped down. And so your personality is something that in some ways is chance. It's like, you are who you are. And if you're someone who is outgoing and sociable and friendly by the very core of who you are, then that might give you an advantage. And if you're someone that doesn't necessarily fall under those categories, so to speak, then the viewership, I imagine, kind of view you as like, well, just be friendlier, just be nicer. But it's very easy to say that kind of sitting on a couch with a full belly and kind of restful sleep.
Right. Absolutely. I think Russell Hantz came up during our call when I talked to your students, and somebody asked, or somebody said something like, Russell played a very good game, and he made those decisions to play that way. And I think I replied saying, I've met Russell Hantz. I had to room with Russell Hantz at a charity event. Like, I got to know him a little bit. And Russell Hantz is who he is. Like, even if he says he's playing like a game, like he wouldn't act like that in real life, I'm pretty sure Russell Hantz played Survivor as he would as Russell Hantz. He wasn't playing a character.
Yeah. I mean, you would know, you know better than most in terms of what, because I think about just coming from the background of theater, thinking about performance, and depending on the role that you're in, you can just be a performer and just take on the role that you need to be. And that sounds very logical. Like if I am a player on Survivor, I will just perform, and I will perform to who's in front of me. Whatever actor's in front of me, I will just perform and adapt. But again, I can just imagine that when you are cold, tired, and hungry, it would take so much effort to like embody that performance.
Yeah.
I think somebody else that I've wondered about is Tony. And I've wondered is Tony in real life like Tony in Survivor? Because I think he's entertaining in the game of Survivor, and I don't know if that's sort of the way he is at home,
right? Or
if part of that is a character. So yeah, that's somebody else I wondered about, and would be curious to know someday. Is that the real Tony?
I have not had the pleasure of meeting Tony, but he's like on the show, he's on all the time. Like he's booking it, and he's running, and he's thinking, like, is that what he's like? Like, I don't know. You'd have to meet him, and then I encourage people to meet the Survivor contestants or read exit interviews and talk to them. And that's not to say that anything that you guys are doing studying this stuff is off base, because I think everything that you guys are doing is like, it's really cool that you guys are studying all of this stuff from what is presented on the show. And I think I think it's accurate. Like, I think even though there's a lot of editing going on, the concepts that are presented are true to life. And they are real concepts, like the idea of the representation of race on the show, performing for the jury, like that absolutely is shown on Survivor. That is not something that's edited out. Concepts of sex and gender, like all these concepts that you guys are studying, like they're all very much present in the show. And it's just like a dig deeper. Like if you want to know a little bit more about the actual individual person, maybe you should meet them or like find exit interviews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the really neat thing of having, like last year, thinking about having Gabby and Christian on the show, because they were able to reflect on the fact that even though they were working in tandem, Christian was getting credit for a lot of the moves that they made, purely because, I would imagine, because of his sex. Like as a man in that duo, he was given a lot of praise for the moves that they were making as a duo. Yeah. And I'm sure that's not unique to them. I'm sure there's lots of scenarios where that's happened.
Right. It's unfortunate in my, like, it's very interesting. It's unfortunate, but you absolutely, I totally agree that that's how that kind of played out. So anyway, go ahead, Jen.
Sorry, I was just going to add on to what Hartley said. A few weeks ago, Hartley and I had I think it was just the two of us, it might have been in class, had a little conversation about tribal council and how people are seated, because I had been wondering, are people assigned seats or do they choose their seats, and what does that look like? And talking about, taller people in the back. Well, if males tend to be taller, they sort of have a view of what's going on. If smaller females are in the front, maybe they can't see that there are conversations and there's eye contact happening. Like, there's so many interesting things to explore there. And not that we're making any judgments about anything, but it's starting conversations and starting discussions, which is really cool.
They do assign seating.
Okay.
They do. And I was assigned all the way at the end in Caramoan every single time. Every single time in Caramoan they put me on the end. I don't know why. And I think with recent seasons where people whisper and do the live tribals, they arrange them knowing that people may get up and whisper in people's ears, I think. So that's some of the producer stuff going on, but there definitely is a thought process behind that. So you're on the right track. It's not chosen, but it is. They do pick it. So, I got the warning that my meeting will end in 10 minutes, but we're at 30 minutes anyway, and that's kind of what I wanted to hit. I just wanted to thank you guys for doing this, and I wanted to raise awareness about there's this class called Surviving Survivor. That's awesome, and it's super interesting. And any other thought, and where can people learn about this? Like, if somebody wants to learn more about this course, like, where can they go?
Well, I guess there's a couple of ways. One is that we're at McMaster University in the Bachelor of Health Sciences program. So the course outline is there, posted on the Bachelor of Health Sciences website. So you can check out the course outline there to learn more about the course. Certainly, Jen and my contact information is on the website, so you could reach out to either of us. We'd be happy to to chat more about the course. I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else that they can connect with us.
I think just via email, or people could find us probably on Twitter, something like that. Get in contact with us. Happy to chat about it. Love to talk about it. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. I'll add, and I'm going to put this on YouTube, so I'll add all that info in the bottom too. So that's fine. But cool. Thanks you guys so much. And hopefully I'll come to a future course when you guys talk about whatever is relevant to any of my experience, or maybe I can connect you guys with somebody else who has some relevant stuff too.
Awesome. Thank you.
That would be great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks you guys.
Thanks so much.
I'm gonna